Hello everyone, today I'm going to be going over the top 5 Druid builds for Diablo 4 Season 5 that you should be playing next week. With the massive unique overhaul balance changes, it has absolutely shook up the meta, but I'm going to help you decode which Druid builds are going to be the best. In the number 5 spot, we have Pulverize Druid. The reason Pulverize is in the number 5 spot isn't because it got significantly buffed or nerfed. It's because it received the fewest changes of the builds. They boosted all of the damage of the core skills to make up for the Shepherd's changes. If you aren't aware, Shepherd's aspect no longer buffs core skill damage, it boosts companion damage now. But Pulverize was not reliant on that aspect as a bunch of other builds were. But it's still got a massive damage buff on Pulverize anyway, from 50 to 92.5%. I know that doesn't seem big, but in reality, that gave Pulverize almost double the damage, and it isn't losing anything. Top that off with Wildheart's Hunger damage is going up by 30%, which is a pair of unique boots that Pulverize Druid love to use already, and the fact that all the damage reduction passives for Bear form are being buffed, on top of the Werebear glyph damage reduction being buffed. You have one fantastically tanky and powerful build. Its biggest issue is that it's going to struggle a little bit with bossing, but it's going to excel in almost every other way. So it's going to be a pretty strong build going into Season 5. Coming in the number 4 spot, I'm going to put Wiar Druid. Now, it did receive some pretty big nerfs, namely Thunderstruck got capped and Shepherds got changed. So they took a whopping damage loss, but they're actually gaining a new unique called Mjolnir's Ring. You may have seen it on the PTR, but it was gloves before and they're turning it into a ring. This will give Wiar a 100% damage boost while Cataclysm is active. You combo that with Tornado is getting buffed by almost 100% in the base damage, because the idea of the Shepherd's Change wasn't to just nerf these builds, it was to try to take the reliance of Shepherds away from these builds so they could stop just having to throw a bunch of companion skills on their bar, right? So they changed it from 35% up to 65% weapon damage, so that's already made up for a decent amount of the damage loss. You combo that with the fact that Wildheart Hunger was being buffed by 30%, and all of a sudden, you've made up for most of what Wiar lost. Now, it does come in the number 4 spot for a reason. While it did still get a little bit stronger than last season, the buffs that the other builds got kind of sent them soaring past Wiar, because Wiar is just trying to get back to break even right now, and it ended up getting, I think, a little bit past break even, so it will be stronger than it was last season. But the other builds that I'm going to show you are going to be way stronger than what they were last season. Coming in the number 3 spot, I'm putting Wiar Druid. Wiar was not relying on Shepherd's aspect, so that's awesome. So really the only nerf that it may have taken is Thunderstruck. But there's going to be 2 new uniques that are going to be worked into this build that are going to more than make up for that. The new Cataclysm Ring is going to come with 100% damage buff, and there's also another new unique called Shard of Varathiel. It increases basic skill damage by 300%, but gives it a spirit cost. When you combine this with aspect of adaptability, spirit per second, and just some easy to get resource cost reduction, you can easily make the basic skill break even with it, causing it to just be a 300% damage increase for the basic skill. Not to mention, while Cataclysm is active, you'll have unlimited spirit, and Wiar aspect already gives you a chance to fully restore your spirit on hit. The only nerf this build, again, really took was Thunderstruck, but it was never reliant on Shepherds, which means it's going to see pretty massive buffs with these 2 uniques if they end up getting worked in, which I really do believe they will. So it's going to be very strong going into Season 5. In the number 2 spot, we have Trample Slide Druid. This build is not relying on Shepherds, which is the first bonus. The next one is that Landslide got absolutely turbo buffed. The damage per hit of Landslide was changed from 37.5 to 70%. The damage area was increased from 1.5 to 2. They also doubled the number of pillars, and the total damage is going from 70% to 280%. This was already to be considered like an A-tier build by most websites, and they just did a massive damage boost to this, right? They also buffed the Earthbreaker Ring to give it a chance to proc Landslide twice. They also gave it ranks to Landslide, Earth attack speed, and crit chance, so I think most Landslide builds may actually want to run this ring, as it is actually quite the damage boost now. Landslide did not receive a lot of buffs, but what it did receive was absolutely massive. It was definitely destroying on the PTR. So just the landslide buff alone is able to make this build jump ahead of many, many other builds. And then when you combo that with nerfs to most of the storm builds and the other top builds, then bam. That's why this one is going to take the number 2 spot. And then they also received some minor buffs, such as like Aspect of Retaliation got buffed, and some of their aspects got buffed by a little bit. But that landslide buff was just astronomical. Now this is going to be a controversial take on what the number 1 spot's going to be, but I do believe it is going to be Companion Druid. I know that's hard to believe that this build archetype that has been bad for so long could possibly be this good, but hear me out. So Shepherds was changed in a massive way. Instead of doing core skills, it now increases your companion damage for each companion you have out. But it gets even better. Most of the damage increases for Companion Druids are general, meaning that they're also increasing the damage of Ravens and Poison Creepers as well. So really, you have 3 abilities that are going to all be dealing a ton of damage. Wolves is still going to be dealing the most by a large amount, but it's not like, you definitely shouldn't discount how much damage Poison Creeper and Ravens are actually going to end up doing this season, because on the PTR it also seemed that they finally fixed Ravens' passive damage and some of the bugs that were happening with it. And on top of that, we're seeing multiple new aspects coming in this season for them. The first one being Moonrage. So you're going to have a chance to kill, or a chance on kill, to get 3 extra wolves. This is insane because the wolves do passive attack damage. So you're essentially doubling the passive attack damage of the wolves. On top of that, for each extra wolf you get, you're going to get an additional damage increase from Shepherds. So you're going to be able to get up to a 240% damage increase from Shepherds aspects to your companions now when you have all of these, when you have all this stuff out. You combo that with the fact that they buffed Aspect of the Alpha in Season 4 to make it increase Wolves damage by another 30%, so it's going to be 260% that you get from Aspect of the Alpha. That right there is already just an insane buff. You're essentially doubling, you gave them an aspect that doubles the passive damage and gives them another 60% damage from Shepherds if you put your Shepherds on your 2-handed weapon. Right, not only that, but Storm's Companion on the PTR was making them a Storm and Nature Magic skill. Because they are trying to open up accessibility and more combos to things, I wouldn't be surprised if this was intended. Now, nobody could really get them to work with the, Storm skills or the Nature Magic skills, but they were tagged as that. So I do believe that the intention probably was to make these, but maybe there was just some bugs going on the PTR. That being said, if that does turn out to be the case, that's going to give them access to Thunderstruck, which is going to be another 60% damage buff. But on top of all of that, we also have an additional buff to Wildheart Hunger. Now, this was already a quick shift build because they were using Bestial Rampage, because if you're not familiar, last season, the aspect for Bestial Rampage got changed to give double the bonus to your companions. So you're getting 100% damage bonus from Bestial Rampage, which means that most companion builds are, they should be a quick shift build, right? So that means we're already going to be using quick shift, which means we'll naturally be able to get Wildheart Hunger, and this is going up by another 30%. This is going to do 60% going into Season 5 instead of the 30% that it currently does. But there is still even more buffs to be had. They changed Storm's Companion, one of the secondaries on it, to buff your pack leader boon lucky hit chance, but it's not in the way that normal lucky hit does. So normally if you give like a secondary stat of plus lucky hit, it increases the lucky hit of like your skills, right? So for example, if I had like plus 10% lucky hit and then I went and looked at my claw, it would go up from like 50 to like 58% or like 55% or whatever, however else that math works out on its lucky hit coefficient. What this does is actually increase the lucky hit chance of Pack Leader. And they showed this on the live stream that right now Pack Leader does 25%. If you have Storm's Companion on, you're going to be able to take that all the way up to like 60% because it's 84%. I think 85 is the highest. And then you can masterwork that by 50%, which is going to take it all the way up to like plus 120%, which means you'll get it to like up to where you can be all the way up to like 55 or 60% on that boon. So you're going to be resetting things like absolute crazy. Like you can use almost any skill and you're going to be able to reset. You're just going to want to make sure that you can stack crit. And because of those buffs, it's actually going to give us access it's actually going to give us access to an Uber Unique, which is something that we really didn't have before, namely Tyrael's Might. Because we're going to be resetting stuff, Tyrael's Might is actually going to be fairly useful for us because we're going to be able to just keep constantly pressing skills and constantly, sending off various AoE abilities, right? And they also buffed Tyrael's Might to where it's going to give us 20% additional damage reduction now instead of 10%. Now, if you're not familiar with the defensives that Companion Druid was running, it either runs Aspect of Might or Vigorous Aspect on the chest slot. So that means that we're actually going to get more by running Tyrael's Might than what we would have already got from the Legendary aspect. They also made it to where Tyrael's Might's going to give like 60% to your all resist, and it's also going to give you like another 7.5% or something to your like increased max resist. So it's just gonna be an insanely like tanky piece of gear to wear, right? Now, and on top of all of this, if all of these buffs to Companion Druid was not enough, they solved the number one issue that most people even had with Companion Druid in the first place. There's a new aspect being added in that says we are going to redirect 17.5% of the damage you take to your companions. And it makes it so your companions never die. So you now will no longer have dead werewolves ever at any tier. And they also buffed wolves last season to make it to where when you use the active, it now makes wolves unstoppable. So you don't have to worry about them getting frozen midair or doing any weird shenanigans like that. So with all of these buffs in mind, that is why I believe Companion Druid will in fact be the best Druid build for Druids going into Season 5. But these are going to be the builds that I believe are worth playing. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.